Imagine finding out that literally every country on planet Earth is in debt. Not a little bit in debt. Not, I forgot to pay my phone bill in debt, but trillions upon trillions of dollars deep. The kind of debt where economists just stare at the number, sigh, and go get a coffee because their brain refused to process it properly. The United States owes over $34 trillion. Japan's debt is so massive compared to its economy that it would be like a guy earning $3,000 a month somehow owing $400,000 and still going on vacation twice a year like nothing's wrong. Argentina defaults on debt so often that economists have basically started scheduling it into their calendars like a recurring subscription. So here's the question that should honestly be a national holiday of confusion. If every single country on Earth owes money, who exactly are they all owing it to? Is there some secret guy in a suit sitting in a bunker somewhere, collecting checks from every government on the planet? Spoiler, there kind of is, except it's way weirder, way funnier, and somehow involves you, your grandma, and a random pension fund in Ohio. The first big secret nobody tells you is that most of a country's debt is not owed to some scary foreign mastermind twirling a mustache in the shadows. It is owed to its own people. Governments borrow from their own citizens using something called bonds, which are basically fancy government IOUs that say, trust me, give me your money now, and I will give you a little bit more back later. So the government sells these bonds to banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and everyday citizens who buy them thinking they are being smart with their savings, not realizing they have just become the government's personal loan shark, except way more polite and with way worse interest rates. This means when a country borrows $100 billion, a huge chunk of that $100 billion is basically the country borrowing from its own grandma's retirement fund and then spending it on roads, hospitals, and occasionally something embarrassing like a bridge that leads directly into a lake. It is less a scary villain owning the country and more the country owing itself money in the most confusing family loan situation imaginable. Now, obviously, some debt does go to other countries, and this is where people get extremely dramatic at dinner parties, especially when someone brings up how much the United States owes China. People say it like China is one bad mood away from repossessing the Golden Gate Bridge and turning it into a toll road overnight. In reality, China holds a few $100 billion of American debt, which sounds terrifying until you realize Japan actually holds even more. And the United States owes itself an amount so much bigger than both combined that China's share looks almost cute in comparison. And here's the funniest part. China buying American debt is not some generous gift. It is actually incredibly convenient for China too, because it keeps the dollar stable, keeps Americans buying Chinese products, and gives China somewhere safe to dump its extra cash instead of just burying it in a very large, very suspicious hole in the backyard. So, it is less China secretly owning America, and more two countries stuck in the most awkward financial situationship in modern history, both too scared to break up. Then you have the international heavy hitters like the IMF and the World Bank, which basically act as the emergency credit card of planet Earth. When a country's economy completely faceplants in the most public and embarrassing way possible, these organizations show up with a loan and a long list of conditions, usually something like cut your spending, raise your taxes, and maybe stop funding a golden statue of a former president standing dramatically on a horse. The country agrees, takes the money, and spends the next couple decades complaining about the conditions while somehow still needing another loan 5 years later. Argentina alone has borrowed from the IMF so many times that at this point they should just have a reserved parking spot at IMF headquarters, maybe a little nameplate on a desk, a mug that says, "World's okayest borrower." It sounds chaotic because it absolutely is chaotic, but somehow this system of borrowing, promising to behave, and quietly not fully behaving, keeps entire economies from completely collapsing overnight, which is either impressive or slightly terrifying, depending on how much coffee you have had today. Here comes the twist that actually breaks people's brains the very first time they hear it properly explained. If literally every country owes money to other countries, and those countries owe money right back to other countries, shouldn't all of that debt just cancel out somehow like some enormous global math equation solving itself? Unfortunately, money is not a friendship bracelet you can just untangle at a group hangout. It is tied to actual currencies, actual interest rates, and actual trust between governments who do not exactly hang out and vibe together like old college roommates. Different currencies rise and fall in value constantly. Interest keeps piling up in the background like an uninvited guest who refuses to leave the party. and every country has its own completely different set of financial problems happening at the exact same time. So no, you cannot just throw every country's debt into one giant pot, stir it around, and declare the whole thing magically canceled, even though wouldn't that honestly make for one of the greatest global group projects ever attempted by humanity? Here is the part that truly changes how you see this whole mess. Countries do not actually need to pay off their debt completely, like ever, not really, not fully. What they need to do instead is manage it responsibly, meaning they keep paying the interest on time and try to grow their economy faster than the debt itself is growing. Think of it exactly like a never-ending streaming subscription that you are absolutely never going to finish paying off. You are simply going to keep paying every single month forever. And as long as you can comfortably afford that monthly payment without crying into your pillow at 3 in the morning, life continues completely fine. This is why countries can carry debt for literally centuries and still function perfectly well, because the goal was never to reach zero. The goal is simply staying in a healthy enough position that lenders keep trusting you enough to keep lending, almost like maintaining a really long, really expensive, really complicated relationship that somehow just keeps working out despite absolutely everyone's expectations. Now some countries have an absolutely ridiculous cheat code available to them, which is printing their own money whenever things get rough. The United States can do this fairly safely because the dollar is the most trusted and most used currency on the entire planet, basically making it the main character with unlimited extra lives in a video game everyone else is forced to play on hard mode. Other countries do not have this luxury, and when they try it anyway without extreme caution, they end up with hyperinflation, which is when your own currency becomes so worthless that you need an actual wheelbarrow full of cash just to buy a single loaf of bread. This actually happened in Zimbabwe and Venezuela, where regular people technically became millionaires and even trillionaires on paper, while somehow still not being able to afford basic groceries, which might honestly be the most tragic yet darkly hilarious financial irony in recorded human history, printing your way to being rich while still being broke at the exact same time. So why does this entire chaotic system not collapse completely like a poorly stacked tower of blocks at a birthday party? The answer is one single fragile idea holding the whole thing together, and that idea is trust. As long as everyone genuinely believes that countries will keep paying their interest and honoring their promises, the whole system keeps spinning like an exhausted hamster on a wheel that never actually goes anywhere, but somehow keeps the lights on for the rest of us. The moment that trust disappears, that is when you get real panic. Banks failing, currencies crashing, entire governments defaulting all at once in a domino effect nobody wants to witness firsthand. So coming back to our original question, who does every broke country on Earth actually owe money to? The real answer, in the most beautifully chaotic way imaginable, is basically everyone owes everyone, including themselves, including each other, including institutions built specifically to lend money to countries that are already broke, forming one giant tangled web of financial promises that somehow keeps functioning purely because everybody quietly agreed to keep playing along without ever actually reading the fine print. And honestly, the next time your uncle complains about the national debt at dinner, just remind him that technically he might already be one of the lenders.